Are you a entrepreneur trying to decide whether or not you should form a sole proprietorship or an LLC? In today's video, I am going to talk to you about the considerations to make when deciding whether or not to form a sole proprietorship or an LLC in the year 2022. Hi, my name is Andrew. I'm the managing attorney here at Molai Law, where we help entrepreneurs just like you start your businesses without having to deal with the complicated legal forms. Our done-for-you service is backed by over 2,830 plus 5-star Google reviews, and we can help you start your business too. The purpose of these videos are to provide you with as much guidance and clarity in the beginning stages of starting a business. So if you haven't already, please make sure you hit the like, subscribe, as well as the bell notification so you don't miss out on any future videos. Now, it's very important to note that prior to doing anything related to business, it's very important that you speak with a professional. You would be surprised how many individuals come to us after they had already started a business. And instead of being able to move forward, take forward steps, they have to take backward steps. So make sure you speak with a professional. So with that side note out of the way, let's go ahead and talk about today's video. What are the considerations to make when deciding whether or not to register a sole proprietorship or an LLC in the year 2022? One of the first major considerations you're going to want to make is the ability to separate your business from personal. If you're not too familiar with a sole proprietorship, the name itself sort of explains how the business works. As a sole proprietor, one's business actions, transactions are all linked to that individual. In other words, there is no separation between personal and business. And as a result of no separation, that individual, that entrepreneur who has a sole proprietorship also may be at risk of personal liability, which means that in the event or course of business, if that business gets sued for whatever reason, then that personal sole proprietorship individual may be liable for that lawsuit. This means that that individual is putting certain things at risk, specifically personal assets, which include a personal bank account, a personal house if an individual owns a house, a personal car, personal savings. All of these are at risk if that individual is operating as a sole proprietorship because, again, there is no separation between personal and business. And so that's going to be the first major consideration. So that's the first major consideration to make. How important is it for oneself to separate business from personal in order to avoid personal liability? That's where the LLC steps in. An LLC is a business entity, but it's a little bit different from a sole proprietorship. While both of them are taxed very similarly in that it's a pass-through entity, come tax time, that individual need only file taxes under their own personal taxes. As I mentioned before, it's a pass-through entity. One of the major differences between a sole proprietorship and an LLC is that an LLC, unlike a sole proprietorship, allows an entrepreneur to separate their personal from their business. This can be very advantageous for the peace of mind that LLCs will provide an individual, because you never know what's going to happen during the course of business. And the last thing you want is a client or a customer knocking on your door trying to sue you personally as a sole proprietorship. And so again, first major consideration to make is whether or not personal liability is important to you. The second consideration to make is going to be, as a sole proprietor, because everything is tied to that single individual, a sole proprietorship is going to limit an entrepreneur's ability to work with others. A sole proprietor is and will only be 100% owner in the company. In other words, if they plan to add a family member, a friend as an owner, as a member of the sole proprietorship, this is not possible. Say, for example, a father creates a business, a sole proprietorship, and eventually wants to pass it down to his son or daughter. In this case, as a sole proprietorship, this would not be possible. In other words, an entrepreneur cannot sell their sole proprietorship to another individual in the event they no longer want to be a part of the business. With an LLC, on the other hand, if an individual wants to be able to add a family member, a friend, some sort of ownership distribution, if they want to be able to sell their company, with an LLC, all of this is possible. And so when creating a business, whether that be a sole proprietorship or an LLC, it's very important to see the big picture. Do you see yourself doing this in the long run, or is this sort of a short stint? If it's a short stint, then a sole proprietorship may be a good option. If it's a long adventure and you plan to eventually sell the business, whether passing that down to your family members, friends, or just selling it to a third party, then an LLC is going to be something that you're also going to want to highly consider. The third consideration to make when deciding whether or not to form an LLC versus a sole proprietorship in the year 2022 is going to be credibility and authority. If you're not already operating as a sole proprietorship, as you know, it's likely that you will have to use your personal name as a business name, unless you apply for a DBA, which is a doing business as. Because you're required to operate the sole proprietorship under your personal name, that may really hinder big parties, big companies from wanting to work with you. Again, each scenario is different. With an LLC, an individual is seen to be more business savvy, and as a result of appearing to be more credible and authoritative in the space, third parties, clients, customers are more willing to work with an individual who has an LLC. Now again, keep in mind that each scenario differs. And the fourth consideration one is going to want to make is a sole proprietorship versus an LLC. An LLC allows you to build what's called a business credit line. Now, a business credit line is separate from your personal credit line, which means that a business has its own business credit score. And if you're not building the business credit score, then one's ability to obtain business loans, one's ability to engage in certain transactions that require a certain credit score, that individual may be hindered if they only have a sole proprietorship. With a sole proprietorship, everything is personal, and so the credit score will be tied personally to that individual. There is no real separation between a personal credit score and a business credit score. Hence, using a sole proprietorship to build one's business credit score will likely be hindered. And so these are the four considerations one is going to want to make prior to deciding and confirming whether or not they want to register a sole proprietorship or an LLC. If you happen to have any questions about anything that I talked about in today's video, please make sure you click the link in the description box below to book your free call with a professional who can help you better understand how to start your own business. If you happen to enjoy this video, please make sure you hit the like, subscribe, as well as the bell notification so you don't miss out on any future videos. It's time to invest in yourself. It's time to rise.